News just in, the IMF has approved South Africa's request for emergency financial support. South Africa has asked for a $4.3 billion under the COVID-19 related emergency finances. Rofiwa Madzena from the Money Desk is here with all the details. Rofiwa, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. So news coming in just a few minutes ago. What do we understand more about this loan that's been approved by the IMF?
Well, what's important to note here, Clement, is that it comes at a very low interest rate and it's to be paid back over the next 5 or so years. And that's going to be very important for South Africa's government, which we already know is drowning in debt. So this is a $4.3 billion loan that you've just mentioned, just over 70 billion rand in rand terms. And the statement that has been released by National Treasury says that this is going to go to supporting health and frontline services, protect the most vulnerable, drive job creation, which is going to be very important for South Africa over the next few years, and of course unlock economic growth through reforms and stabilize public debt. Now, a lot of the scrutiny that came through when it came to South Africa applying and getting this loan, Clement, was the fact that South Africa has not implemented the necessary structural and economic reforms to be able to direct the funds where necessary. So I speak here about issues around our state-owned entities, our overburdened public health system, and just the way that our economy has gone in terms of being in a recession, partly due to COVID-19. So it's going to be critical for government to heed the call of international institutions like the IMF and introduce structural and economic reform so that we can actually see where this $4.3 billion loan from the IMF actually goes, Clement.
Yeah, do we know yet how we're going to be servicing this loan in terms of interest paid back? What are some of the preconditions? I understand they're not as strict as the normal loans that the IMF normally approves, but what's the plan? Do we know yet how we are paying this loan and some of the ways we'll be servicing it?
So that's a very interesting question. It was highlighted by the finance minister when the announcement of the application was made that the conditions for the loan from the IMF will not be the same as the normal loan. Yeah. So this is a special COVID-19 loan, and the conditions that many people were scrutinizing from the IMF in terms of sacrificing our national sovereignty, if you will, won't be part of that. Details around the servicing of the loan have not yet been discussed. South Africa is also, the government rather, is dealing with a myriad of other loans, especially when it comes to them being a guarantee for state-owned entities. You would have heard today, the banks rather, yesterday, saying that they want their money back, paid back from the likes of SAA. So I think government is still focusing quite keenly on the likes of SAA and repaying the loans that have been gotten there, and also that over 400 billion rand in debt of Eskom. And I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation in terms of how National Treasury, along with other governmental institutions, are going to be coming together to service the loan. I think the one big positive here, Clement, is the fact that we are getting the loan at a very low interest rate, which is going to be helping us quite a bit in the interim period. Yeah,
so we're looking at $4.3 billion. That's how much the IMF has approved. There's a $1 billion that the New Development Bank is borrowing us. The African Development Bank also borrowing us about $5 billion. A lot of people will be asking how much of this money may go and bail out SAA and this restructuring process that has, taken off. But as you indicated there, with the IMF, it's pretty clear that that's going to be used specifically for COVID-19 and the relief measures and to deal with the issue of debt in the country.
That's right, Clement. It's a big worry amongst all the onlookers of the South African economy, how exactly these loans that you've just mentioned are going to be spent. The other ones, in terms of the conditions of where the money is directed, isn't as clear as the one that we're getting from the IMF. Yeah. I think it's going to be very important for government to heed the call of potential foreign and domestic investors to implement those structural and economic reforms that I've just spoken about. there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the South African economy and really on how government has conducted itself. I think another big element here is the fact that President Cyril Ramaphosa and his current cabinet don't have the buy-in from the ruling party to implement the difficult decisions that have to be taken to boost the country's economy. So here we know that the money is going to go towards COVID. It does say towards the healthcare and education system, but it'll be interesting to see if any of that money goes into the tourism industry, which in this instance, Clement, very interestingly would include the likes of SAA. So I don't know if some loopholes could be found by government to direct some of that cash flow, but I think that we are going to be very scrutinized by international onlookers in terms of how we direct this money. For now, I think the IMF and other institutions are giving South Africa the benefit of the doubt that South Africa or the government has to focus on elements within the government or within institutions, state-owned and otherwise, that can drive economic growth and not guzzle cash like the SOEs have done.
Yeah, I mean, the finance minister hasn't really been forthcoming in terms of how they will be mobilizing funds and from where exactly to fund this, the birthing of this new SAA. But Rofhiwa Madzena, thank you so much for your time, for bringing us the breaking news. The IMF has now approved the $4.3 billion loan.